I was just eating lunch and I was sitting there thinking, I haven't tweeted in like 10 days. And I was like, why is that? And I was like, I don't have anything to say. I don't know what to say. And that was again from that place of, actually, no, I am doing things of value, but there's still that self-doubt of, but why would anyone want to know or hear about that? And it's kind of crippling. Once you get in that cycle, it's hard to get out of it.
Today I'm speaking with Max Haining. Max is the founder of the very popular online community 100 Days of No Code, where he helps non-technical founders bring their ideas to life using no-code technologies. Together, Max and I discuss different ideas about education. We talk about some of the different things that he's doing inside of his community that have helped his students succeed and his business grow. And of course, we get into Max's recommendations for his core stack that he builds with himself and that he teaches. So if you're enjoying these conversations, make sure to like this video and to subscribe to the channel. You're listening to User Stories, episode number 11 with Max Haining. All right, so Max, it's the end of 2022, almost 2023 now. You are running a no-code community that helps people learn how to use no-code. And there are lots of communities out there at this time that do the same thing. What is it about 100 Days of Code and about what your 100 Days of No Code and about what you're doing in particular that's making it stick? What makes it special?
Yeah. Well, firstly, thanks for kind of having me on. Really excited to be here. And I think 100 Days of No Code, obviously, as you say, there's lots of communities. There's lots of ways you can learn to no code. Of course, you can just go to YouTube. You can go to Twitter and all those kind of places. I think what makes us unique is two things. One, we kind of give you structured learning. So you're not sort of wondering, should I go here? Should I go there? Should I watch this video? Should I do that thing? We basically tell you what to do in a very structured way. So that's one thing. We'll always kind of be by your side and hold your hand on the learning journey. And then the second thing is sustainable learning. So basically giving you the structure in place, you can build habits that sustain your learning. So rather than just giving you like 10 hours worth of no-code content all in one go, we really try and focus on habit-based learning. So you're only doing 30 to kind of an hour, 30 minutes to an hour a day. So yeah, those are kind of the two main things. And then sprinkled on top is the community as well.
I want to dive into all three of those things. And let's start with habits and structure. So I've heard you in other interviews. I think one interviewer asked you about James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, which I read myself probably a couple of years ago now. And I loved it. I fell in love with that book, but I'm curious to hear how that book influenced your philosophy about what you're building with 100 Days of No Code.
Yeah. And to be honest, I'll make a confession. I've never actually read it the full way through, but I have read kind of elements of it. And actually, it was enough because it influenced me enough to kind of design 100 Days of No Code, kind of how it is, or at least a big part of how it is. So I think the biggest influence it had on me designing this learning experience that we have at 100 Days of No Code is that sense of compounding. What I mean by that is, instead of, again, having to do learning in these big unsustainable chunks, the biggest takeaway I got from the James Clear book was that it's better to learn in bite-sized, small, micro chunks rather than this kind of macro, huge sort of chunks that actually aren't really sustainable or convenient or doable for many people, unless you have infinite willpower, which isn't really normally the case. So that's kind of the biggest takeaway I got from it.
And why? So do you view your job then, in terms of what you're building? Like, are you more setting up an environment for people and then just kind of getting out of the way, like setting up a structure, like you said, an environment, and then just getting out of the way and let learning happen? Or how much of it is you bringing your expertise and teaching what you know to people? I guess
Yeah.
what's the balance there? If that I didn't phrase that properly, but hopefully you got what I'm asking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. To be honest, I think the balance really depends on the learner that we're serving. So some people will come in and they need a lot of hand holding. They will need extra support, and those are normally people that are coming from the low end of the technical spectrum. And we get a lot of those people because one, no code kind of invites naturally people with or without or less technical expertise. But also, 100 Days of No Code invites beginners specifically because we are a beginner led community. So, oftentimes, we'll need to kind of give extra wraparound support. So, on top of the content and the structure that we give people, it's also just about the encouragement and the vibes and the actual kind of the mental side of learning to no code, of just encouraging someone and actually, yeah, you can do this, and being kind of that positive cheerleader as well, which we do on top of the community. So in that case, we'll give some wraparound support, but then in other cases, some people just have a lot of direction themselves and a lot of willpower, and we just channel that for them. So we will channel their energy and their excitement, and just give them a structure to learn to no code in the quickest and most impactful way. But oftentimes they will just, they've come from a more technical background and they will just go at it and really start realizing the possibilities of no code probably faster than anyone else. And just to kind of step back a bit, what we have is async kind of based learning experiences, and then also if you ladder it up, we also have sort of live experiences. And depending on who you are, your resources, and how you want to learn, you can choose between those.
You mentioned community a few times. Why do you think that matters so much when someone is learning something?
Yeah, of course. So I didn't know that community was important when I was starting to no code. So I very much sort of went at it with the cool. So this is a really exciting space. I'm just going to chip away at it in my bedroom on my own without any support. And I'm going to crack it. It'll be fine. It will be fine. But one thing I didn't really take into account was learning any new skill is going to be tough. Learning any new skill that is actually developing in and of itself, like no code is still early, it's still a maturing space, so everyone is still figuring out the best ways to learn it, the best tools to learn. So again, I was coming into a space without much structure in and of itself, and also I hadn't factored in that I would be having many headbanging moments. I kind of was sold this idea of no code being easy and being, as fast as kind of whipping up a spreadsheet. And in some cases it is, but in a lot of cases it isn't. So I hadn't mentally prepared myself for the fact that it was going to actually be quite hard. So all those three things combined really, really. Yeah, sort of set myself up for failure. And then 2 months into my no code journey, that was when I actually realized, no, I do need support here. I do need a sense of community. And the sense of community for me initially was Twitter. And that is when I announced on Twitter I was doing 100 days of learning this skill, and sort of with the hope that someone or some people would actually join me as well.
And I was listening to an interview where you talked about that first tweet that you made. And at the time, you didn't have a big audience, I think. And you just kind of threw this tweet out there like, hey, this is what I'm doing. And it caught on. People seem to resonate with it. Why do you think that is? We're talking kind of about building in public here too. Why do you think
Sure.
why do you think people resonate so much with a tweet like that, with you just sharing what you're doing? What is it about human
Yeah,
psychology?
I think there was an element. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think there was an element of it at the time, right place. So obviously at the time everyone was in lockdown. It was 2020. Um, and people were craving something to do in their kind of their spare time, and also people to connect with online. So I think there, just to paint that context, I think there was definitely that really helped. And then in terms of actually just sharing that tweet and kind of the build in public sense of it, I think people appreciated the fact that I was just going at it, and uh, putting my kind of name or sort of face on the line or whatever, and just transparently learning this skill. And it kind of, I think, hit a nerve with people because they thought, well, why don't we also do this publicly, in a transparent, open way, and lift each other up on that journey together. So I think there's those aspects to it, but yeah, always curious to kind of hear other people's thoughts and why or what kind of about it landed with people.
Yeah, I don't know. It's probably a bunch of things when I think about it myself. I think you're right that part of it is like, hey, this guy's putting himself out there and tackling this new skill. I can do it too. So I think there's something that's like inspirational about seeing people just, share what they're doing. I also think like there's something about being vulnerable, that or sharing your own kind of vulnerability. Like when you tweet like that, it's like, hey, I don't know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting into. I'm just starting this new path, and it's very evident that you're being vulnerable. And I think people warm up to that too. What do you think after? I mean, you kind of gave your
Mm.
thoughts, but if you had to like, is there anything else you can think of? This because for sorry, so let me just
Yeah.
because there's a bit of a delay here. So let me keep going. This build in public thing, I see it picking up steam. I think
Mhm.
you're right that part of it is like, COVID happened and we were all locked down, but it seems to
Mm.
be picking up more and more steam. And I don't see it, we're not locked
Mm.
down anymore. Not in the, it's
Sure.
almost 2023 now, and people are still building in public. And it's only seems to be picking up more steam. So I'm kind of ranting now, but yeah, what are your thoughts?
Mm. Yeah, no, I agree. It's definitely something that is picking up a place, and there's kind of uh, an undeniable like momentum about the building public space, and that is something we kind of, in a strange way, it was never intended for that purpose, but in a strange way, and I think for a lot of people, 100 days of no code is the starting point for someone's building public journey. And the reason for that is not because um, it helps them specifically build in public in the best way, but what it does do is it gives them a cadence of tweeting, whereby after a certain number of days they get more comfortable tweeting, and in being comfortable tweeting, then you're more able to actually share your own story. So we essentially just give people the permission to tweet anything, day one, day two, day three, and it's like, oh well, 100 days of no code, that's kind of the rule, so I have to do it. Versus you just kind of going into, or shouting into the void and not really having a reason to do that. So I didn't really answer that question, but I think it ties into the building public stuff, and how we almost give people their initial voice, and then they find it eventually and kind of use it as a base to actually share their authentic self online as well.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Like it's obviously, if you've made it such a central part of your program of 100 days of no code that people have to come in and share what they're doing, you recognize the importance of it. And I love seeing when people are, like starting something new and tweeting about it. What kind of I guess what are the some of the most common reservations that people have when they join about making their first tweet or about sharing what they're doing? Do you see a lot of pushback there, or are people generally kind of okay with it and excited to get started?
Yeah, it's a good point, and I think it really depends again who's coming into the program, but often most people that come across 100 days are kind of also part of that Twitter movement, but they maybe haven't taken that leap yet, and they've just been watching on the sidelines. So they're kind of aware that it is a thing, but they haven't necessarily done it themselves. So we're almost there as the nudge or to kind of bridge that gap for them. So they come in with an open mind to the idea of building in public. But generally, the reservations are kind of no one's going to listen to me. Why should I be sharing something? Uh, there's not going to be any value that I'm providing from just tweeting into the void with 10 or 20 followers. And then there are also just some practical stuff like some people are like, well, I kind of don't want my employer to see this, and I'm like, that's fair enough. You can just create another account, so those are the kind of common things.
Going back to those nagging thoughts, I have those too still. Whenever I tweet, like, "What the hell am I doing? Why am I saying this? No one needs to hear what I'm thinking." Did you struggle with that too when you first started, and do you still have those voices?
Oh, big time. Yeah, it was funny actually. I was just eating lunch and I was sitting there thinking, I haven't tweeted in like 10 days. Um, and I was like, why is that? And I was like, I don't have anything to say. I don't know what to say. And that was again from that place of, actually, no, I am doing things of value, but there's still that self-doubt of, but why would anyone want to know or hear about that? And it's kind of crippling once you get in that cycle. It's hard to get out of it. So as a beginner, it's even harder because you've never done it before. And I must have spent about 2 months just watching people lurking on Twitter, watching some kind of more well-known people in the space before I eventually took the leap.
Yeah, and as I heard you talking about your community there, one of the things that jumped out at me in terms of like a purpose that it serves is just kind of providing that safety net. Like if I have a group of people who who are part of my community, and I tweet something, even if it's maybe like not the most exciting thing, I have like a group of people who are there who are supportive, who'll maybe like the tweet or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes. Yes. That's actually such a good point. And with I don't know if you've heard of Ship 30.
no,
Ship
tell me
30
about
for
it.
30. It's kind of like a big online writing community. Mm. Yeah, awesome. And they have a really really powerful kind of system where obviously a lot of people joining their program. Um, it's they're going to be writing for the first time and publicly sharing their work, which is obviously scary. So when a new Ship 30 for 30 cohort begins, everyone is encouraged, just like 100 Days of No Code, they're encouraged to share their writing. But they're not only encouraged to share it, but they're also encouraged to cheerlead everyone else's writing that they've shared. So it's this really powerful kind of network of people all cheerleading each other. So actually, it's a massive safety net and it's a massive kind of safe space for someone to start. And that is exactly kind of what we do is and make it easier for people to build in public just because other people are also doing it as well in the same community.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And another reason why I think communities are so attractive. I was actually yesterday thinking about joining this one online membership, and I had my credit card in there. I was about to sign up for a year membership, but the only reservation I had was that like I wasn't sure of how active their community was. It wasn't like when I go to 100 Days of No Code, you guys put community front and center, and it's like part of the appeal. It's part of why someone would want to join 100 Days of No Code. This one that I was going to, I was seeking out that community, and I wasn't sure how active of a community it was. They had like tons of great information about all of this stuff that I was interested in, but I wanted to be part of this group that was communicating and helping each other out. I've also been on the other side that you're in, where I was teaching English before this, and I had my own online community of people, and I know how difficult it is to set that community up and manage it, and to just be consistent with it, really. So, what tips do you have? I'm curious for running a great community like you have at 100 Days of No Code.
Yeah, it's a big one. It's a big old piece, that one. And to be honest, I kind of uh, very much had a baptism of fire coming into community building. Because when I started 100 Days of No Code, I didn't know that I was building a community at all. So that wasn't on the agenda, and I didn't actually know community building was a skill or a thing, or like a profession even. So I kind of became aware of it very organically, and maybe that was why I was able to build something quite authentic rather than almost starting out to build a community, when I almost just started out to learn a skill, and then bring other people along with me. So I think that's just, again, context as to how I kind of approached it, which was from a very non-community based place. But it just made sense for what we were doing. And that was kind of when I realized that it was necessary. Because I know one of the biggest advice people give around community building is don't build a community if it doesn't need to be there, if there's not a real core why behind its existence. Whereas for me, the why just became apparent, or was apparent, from the get-go, or very early from the beginning of the journey, because I needed support as a beginner. Lots of people also were asking me for support as I was, even on day 20 of my journey, it became apparent that people needed support as they were going through their 100 days. So that why was very clear to me. So I think that's just fundamentals, but crystallizing the why is something I would recommend. And then the second point, again at a really high level, is, are you bringing people together just because they've got a shared interest, or are you bringing people together because they have a shared outcome that they want to achieve? And those are kind of two different things. So an interest is just, oh, we like no code, let's just talk about it. Whereas a shared outcome is a skill or a transformation that they want to attain, that they don't currently have, and they want to go on that journey together. And that, to me, is a far more compelling reason to bring people together and create a community, rather than just, oh, we like to talk about no code, which is also valid in and of itself, but is probably less compelling for community building.
Yeah, and I think that last point kind of ties back into the why also, right? I mean, if you have like a common goal that you're aiming for, that's definitely a why to join a community. Have there been any other whys that have manifested since you've started the community and have grown and taken it to where it is today? You mentioned first that you needed support, so it was obvious to you that other people who were going down this path would need support. Anything else in terms of why community is so essential that has manifested as you've started to, or as you've started this?
Yeah, I think there's many kind of facets of why community is important. Obviously, there is that kind of practical, just getting help from other people, in terms of asking questions, and whether that may be technical or otherwise, around the topic of interest that you are learning. So obviously, in our case, it was no code. So there's that kind of practical lens of just getting technical or questions answered by other people that will help you move a step forward on that journey. I think then there's probably deeper, or like more nuanced facets of community that are less visible, but are equally as important. So that feeling of just being in a space of other people doing the same thing as you said earlier, it's inspiring. You feel supported in ways you probably otherwise wouldn't. There's probably more motivation that you've got just by seeing what other people are doing, and it's there really, to drive you forward. So and kind of overcome that mental blocker or blockers that you have for learning that skill. So there's probably the practical side of it, and then the mental side of it as well.
Nice. Um, what hacks for learning? Let's turn our attention back to the actual learning piece now. When someone comes in, so I join your community. I'm starting day one of 100 days of no code, and I have this long road ahead of me. What hacks have you experimented with to facilitate learning? I'll give you an example of one that I heard you speak about. And I don't think you've actually tried this yet, but it's an example of one that you were thinking about trying. And that was kind of like negative rewards. So, for example, if you like miss a day or like don't complete the course, you have to pay twice the amount that you would normally pay. If you complete it, you pay the normal price. My girlfriend and I do something similar with like we have this mat near the front of our door, and if we're supposed to put our shoes on the mat instead of just throw them on the floor. And if I screwed up yesterday, I left my shoe off of the mat, and it's like a $5 fine or something like that. So that one in particular is interesting. Have you tried that since that one interview in which you spoke about it? And also, what other hacks are you experimenting with?
Yeah, it's a really kind of good one, and no, thanks for reminding me. I'd forgotten about that one. The kind of yeah, the sort of I think it's in like technical lingo, it's called like fret bets. So you sort of there's some I'm not sure, yeah, but it's a kind of an interesting way to keep someone accountable, so that they don't, yeah, have to pay some fine or whatever. So that is not something we have implemented, but it is definitely a cool idea actually, and I think it could be interesting to look at. But we do kind of do the traditional reward based learning. So instead of the kind of the punishment based learning, I'm not sure, or the threat based kind of learning, we do implement just sort of classic rewards into the learning experience. So 100 days is quite conducive to adding or sprinkling on top like nice rewards as someone goes through that journey, because there are just natural milestones as someone moves through the journey. So for example, if someone gets to their first week in no code, we will give them some no code discounts that they can kind of unlock to make learning more affordable, or something else that would kind of just make their learning journey easier. And then we will also kind of add just some surprise random ones across the days, just so people kind of like open it almost like a Christmas present, that they're not expecting, to kind of keep their morale and their motivation high. So I think there's some reward based learning that we do. We also have a leaderboard. So based on the amount that people are tweeting and consistently going through their daily tasks, we'll have a public leaderboard that they can see. And actually, we don't have any rewards attached to that right now, but just the public exposure of who is at the top of the leaderboard and who isn't. I think people really enjoy, and people love seeing their name on a leaderboard and where they are on that leaderboard. And that in and of itself, without any rewards, is actually quite powerful, seemingly. So a couple of things there that are hacks that have kind of just added on top of the content that we have.
Yeah, it really seems like with a lot of the stuff that you're doing here, we talked about some of it earlier with the building in public and the community, that, and now these hacks too, that you're really hacking in to human psychology, and just like, taking advantage of things that all of us have. Like, why is it that I get so excited when I see my name at the top of the leaderboard there, or all of these other things, like these intermittent rewards that you just spoke about there too. People love that. Are these things, like, do you study this stuff? Do you have a background in education or psychology, or are all of these things kind of things that you figured out along the way? It seems like part of your journey was very much just accidentally falling into it, sharing what you're doing, and learning things along the way. Or how much of it is you actually making the effort to go out there and find out what other people are doing and what's working?
Yeah, it's very much accidental, and it's all kind of very like just in time. It's all very just in time. So like we have like very much organically evolved, and it's not been none of the curriculum, the experience, or anything has been kind of manufactured or like pre-baked. It's all been iterated on over time as we've kind of learned from um, our own experience, but also our learners' experience. So one of the biggest anchors for how we design the program is just me and also some of the other team members. And what I mean by that is, what would I have wanted as a beginner going through this program? And I still, to some degree, see myself as a beginner. And that is actually like a really good, unique lens to look at this whole experience from, because I kind of know exactly what I'd want at different points in the journey, which I didn't have when I was getting started myself. So there is a sense of me just indulging my own things that I wanted early on and adding those to help others that are just starting out. So there's that, and then the second part of it is just feedback. We constantly listen to learners and then take their amazing ideas, steal them, and then apply them to kind of the experience, especially the ones that we think will work well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If you had to think about a complete beginner coming into your program who has no prior experience with no code or any of these programming concepts, and if you had to boil down like three of the first fundamental concepts, I'm not talking about platforms, but concepts that you'll need to use across any sort of, or that you'll need to understand across, regardless of the no code tool that you're using, what would those concepts be?
Yeah, great question. And that's I love that question because yeah, normally people will ask, and it's normally all it's tool focused, it's platform focused, which I think is kind of the. I mean, obviously, it's a natural way of looking at things, but ultimately, we're still building software at the end of the day. So there needs to be some conceptual element to that learning journey. Whether you're using code or no code, there's going to be some concepts that you're still going to have to actually apply. So you're thinking like a software developer, which I think some people forget and don't realize when they're coming into the space, and that's totally normal. So um, for me, the kind of the biggest ones that we teach and kind of help people on. Now, I'm not saying we teach them this stuff immediately because it would probably freak people out and scare them, and I would certainly run away if I heard about these things early on. But we do focus on databases, so database design, what are databases, relational databases, and how you can kind of best structure one for most no-code projects. So that's a core one that we teach. Then kind of moving on to APIs. So how can you integrate tools together and bring data from one place to another? Again, another core ingredient of a lot of no-code apps and projects, and just websites in general. And then the last ingredient that we teach is design. So we're by no means a design school. We're not a kind of like a UX or UI kind of specialist, but we will give people some kind of high level tips and knowledge that they can channel into any project that they're building. So they're designing something that is not just functional, but is usable as well for the end user.
Which of those three do you find the most difficult to teach, for you as a teacher, and then also for students to pick up?
I think people, and we've got one of our kind of no code boot camps going at the moment, which is sort of essentially a 30-day version of 100 days. And the one that people are kind of going through right now is databases. And there are certainly some kind of head scratching moments where people kind of realize or look at databases through the lens of a spreadsheet, because that's the only thing that they've kind of known before that point, and try and kind of look at how they're different, and then we will, and how they're similar, at least from a UI point of view. And then we will sort of try and tease out those differences and why databases are more powerful and why they need them in their projects. And I think the relational databases and the one-to-many relationships, the one-to-one, all that stuff, that is quite hard to teach and just wrap your head around. But that's why we take special attention on that, so that people don't feel rushed, and can kind of learn it at their own pace, really, because it's a hard one. It's a hard concept to grasp.
Yeah, and it's also, I think, I spent a lot of time teaching the boot camps at Bubble, and it was also one for me too when I was learning all of this stuff, that when that clicked, when I understood what a relational database was, everything else, not, I shouldn't say everything else was easy after that, because it wasn't, but like it was so fundamental that things start to get a little bit easier once that mental model of what a relational database really makes sense and is formed. It's amazing just how much of like all of this stuff is, how is data structured and how can we move it around, going back to like APIs or
Yeah.
front end interfaces, like how do we take data and move it to different places, essentially. So moving on to the actual tools that you use, one of the things that I find really interesting, and I imagine would be a huge challenge for you, is that the no code landscape is forever shifting, and there are new tools that I see all the time coming into the space. How do you just, I guess, look out into the landscape and try to make sense of what is going on, and determine, hey, this tool is worth paying attention to. This could be really cool to add into the curriculum. How do you manage that aspect of what you're doing?
Hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting challenge, that one, and it's exciting, right? We're in this space that is evolving so quickly, and we're getting all these shiny new toys coming our way. But also, as most of us are in this space, we're builders, we're makers, we're entrepreneurs. We often will have shiny object syndrome. So it is extremely hard to kind of it's extremely hard to kind of focus on a core stack of tools. But I think that is also the same thing that is incredibly important about a learning experience, is not showing too many things, because then you're going to essentially distract people. So what we do is we always teach like a core stack, and then edge cases that people have. We will kind of recommend different tools in the landscape that really focus on one niche. So like whether that's video games or creating chatbots or something more specific. But then there's kind of the more all-in-one builders that will focus on for the core stack, and then the shinier stuff or the more specific niches will kind of bring in as and when it's needed or when people need it. But like we won't almost dangle that in front of them at the beginning, because that could be that could cause some chaos.
And what is that core stack? And has it changed since you started?
Yeah, it is certainly an evolving one, and I guess I preface this with the fact that, again, we're a um, beginner-led community. So this is part of the leaning why we teach this stack that I'm going to share. But also, I think it's a really good stack moving in, just anyone entering the space. But essentially, and I always forget like the fifth one here, but essentially we teach Notion, which is kind of just a nice tool that covers lots of internal use cases, but also personal use cases. We teach Zapier, as great grounding for automation, as you're getting started in that. We teach Adalo as kind of a really nice tool that gives you a lot of power and is kind of the epitome almost of visual no code development in the way you're sort of moving things across this kind of canvas in like a Figma like way. And you can do lots of things with it, namely building mobile apps. And then the last two that we kind of teach are softer, so which is essentially a web app version of a Darlo, but probably even a more intuitive interface, as we kind of help people build their first simple web apps. And then, as I said, I'd forget the last one. But yeah, there is one more that we teach. And it's lost me, but it will come back to me.
No worries, no worries. If you personally had to deal, like, if you had to take one or two of all of the different no code tools that you've played around with and just pick one or two to have for the rest of your life and not be able to use any other tools, what would they be and why?
There we go. That's just, yeah, reminded me. The one tool that I actually tweeted about this the other day is one tool I'd start with out of all of them is Airtable. So Airtable is like the one I'd recommend anyone joining the space, learning to no code. That's the first tool I'd start with. And probably to answer your question, the one that I could probably do the most with as well is so it's, yeah, ironic that was the one I forgot. But the reason I say that is because it is the it is the core to a lot of no code projects as a space to stash your data, and really you can create a lot of things with it. So it can be an automation tool, it can be an internal tool that you can create client portals with and CRMs with, but then as I said, it can also be the backbone to your project with a front end added on top. So that's probably one I would say is the one I'd go with.
Yeah, it's funny. As I was preparing for this interview, I was watching a few videos on your YouTube channel, and there was one in which one of your instructors was teaching Airtable, and I'm pretty much just a bubble guy. I've used some of these other tools that you've mentioned, but nothing really more than just kind of dabbling and seeing what they're about. And I was watching a little bit of that video and thinking, and I saw him building out all of these things that I didn't know you could do with Airtable. I thought it was like pretty much just like a database or a place where, a database. But I thought after watching that video that I should check it out and see what else is there. I saw on your, sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, no, right. No, I was just, I think that's the thing. It fools people because it's got such a friendly UI and intuitive interface that it fools you that there isn't much behind sort of the curtain, but actually there's a lot there. So I think it kind of can lull people into this, like, oh, it's just, this thing, but actually, yeah, it does, as you say, it does do a lot of things.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to check it out more. I saw on your Twitter that you are also teaching kids no code. I think this is fairly new. Yes. Why was it important for you? Why did you decide to go down that path?
Yeah, it's for a lot of reasons. I think the main one for me, and my co-founder on that, Glenn, may have a slightly different answer, but the main one for me was that no code is still firmly in Twitter, in the tech bubble, it feels like, and of course it's moving slowly but surely outside of that. But I kind of realized that the best way to bring no code into the mainstream is actually teaching people early. And what I mean by that is, if someone is, or any kid going through the education system, if they are taught no code as part of the curriculum, what that means is that any job that they end up in, whether that's they're an athlete, a HR specialist, a doctor, a kind of physiotherapist, whatever that may be, they will have some knowledge of no code, and that will then spread across industries. So by teaching early, you're kind of almost kind of planting this seed that will then spread throughout kind of society and sort of the mainstream way of doing things. And I think that is where we can have the biggest impact early on, rather than obviously teaching kind of older sort of people in the space. And so that's probably the biggest reason.
What have you learned so far from teaching kids? The reason I'm asking, or one thought I had when I saw that you were teaching kids, is, I saw this kid on the bus the other day, and this happens more and more frequently. This kid, I think, was, if I had to guess, like 2 years old or something, could probably not even talk yet, but could navigate through an iPad probably much faster than I could, and just like intuitively, it was amazing to watch. Like, and I see this more and more, where babies essentially know how to navigate these interfaces that we've built. It seems very natural to them. And do you find that, I know this is new, but when you're teaching kids, do these concepts click quicker? Is there even a need to call it no code, because it's just, we're so technologically advanced now, and these kids are growing up with all of this stuff around them all the time? I don't know how old you are, but I was born in 1990, and I feel like that was kind of like my generation is kind of one of the last generations where before things got really crazy. So what do you think about just the environment, I guess, that kids are growing up in and learning this stuff in? What have you learned from that?
Yeah, such a good point. Like there's almost no need for us, like in the sense of, I mean, yeah, like people or kids are their ability to pick up this tech is kind of amazing, and that is definitely something we've seen from the initial groups of kids that we've taught, is they just pick up this technology far quicker than teaching adults. And I think one of the biggest insights we've kind of gained from teaching kids is that they are far more capable to sort of almost open up a tool and then have at it and kind of play and figure it out themselves, versus what we see kind of when teaching adults is more, that structure and the step-by-step guides and walking them through kind of the different steps in that process to building something. Whereas kids, or the ones at least we have taught, have been able to be more independent and play and come to something, maybe not in the right way, but they've been able to come to a solution in a tool of their own doing, which is really, really exciting.
And what has the reception been like from adults when you go into schools? Or I don't know exactly, how you're approaching this challenge of teaching kids, but I imagine your model's not to go directly to the kid and say, hey, pay us to teach you no code. What has the reception been like from the adults when you present like this idea? Hey, I want to teach your kids no code.
Yeah. So we to give some context, so we teach in schools, but we're also kind of looking into teaching homeschooled kids. So yeah, two customers will obviously be the schools and the parents. And the reaction we get, and it's very careful, kind of the way we frame it. We're framing it as essentially digital skills of the future, rather than focusing too heavily on, we're teaching you, no code skills, because I'm sure, as you've found, Jacob, that you're met or greeted with sort of blank faces whenever you kind of share no code to someone that isn't in the space. So we kind of use that language, and when you kind of frame it like that, it becomes a bit of a no-brainer. And then when you show an adult or the teacher or whatever, what someone or what a kid can achieve with the tools that we're going to teach. I think that's kind of the second, um, like, oh, okay, yeah, let's do this kind of thing. But no, it's not easy, and it's definitely again an awareness problem that we need to, yeah, need to push out more.
I like that approach though, because I mean, I've ranted on this podcast before about how I hate the word no code. You used a phrase, digital tools of the
Got
future
you.
there, which, yeah, I mean, digital tools of the future. I think that's close. I like visual programming too, but I also think that neither of those are as sexy as no code is. Unfortunately, it's just like a really great term that that works for what it is. But my hope is that when you're teaching these kids all of these tools that you're using, that the next great term that might replace no code will come from a kid just talking about whatever it is that they're doing. That would be my bet.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that would be awesome. That would be so cool. Yeah, if you have any kind of alternative ideas of the naming, I'll just sort of subtly add it or name drop it into the curriculum. So it's just, planting in their minds slowly but surely.
Yeah, that exactly. Okay, last question for you, and I want to read a quote actually from James Clear's book Atomic Habits. So it says, "When nothing seems to help, I go and look at a stonecutter hammering away at his rock, perhaps 100 times without as much as a crack showing in it. Yet at the 101st blow, it will split into two. And I know it was not that last blow that did it, but all that had gone before." So, with that quote in mind, when you think about what you're doing with 100 Days of No Code and all of your ambitions that you have in this space, whether it's teaching children or adults or whoever, what does that 101st blow look like when the rock splits? What's like the ultimate outcome that you're hoping to achieve with all of this stuff?
Yeah, firstly, as you read that out, I'm thinking, why don't we have this on our website? That quote. I'm just gonna note that down, and we'll get that on there. But yeah, that's just too good. It's too good, and obviously speaks to what we're doing exceptionally well, better than any copy that I could write. But yeah, so to answer your question, what is that kind of what does that outcome look like that we're building towards? I think I kind of touched on it earlier, around the impact of no code transcending just this kind of tech bubble that we're currently in, and moving into other sectors and industries and types of organizations and people as well. And I think that's the key one. It's basically what I want to do, where I want to go, is basically changing kind of who is kind of building our tech. So who is building digital spaces that we're using day in, day out, and then also what is being built. So I think at the moment we're probably not able to solve as many kind of global problems as well as we could, just because of the lack of diversity in who is solving those problems. Whereas I think if we have more builders and problem solvers that can build tech with no code, we'll naturally see better solutions that will help more people. So I think that's kind of the broader sense of the outcome I want, but it's a big one, and yeah, exciting one, but a long way off.
It's beautifully said, and I guess just remember the stone cutter when things are tough. Is
Yes.
the moral of the story, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Max, thank
Exactly.
you,
Exactly.
thank you so much for coming on the show. It was great talking to you. I really enjoyed speaking with you. I love what you're doing at 100 Days of No Code. I love that it's clicking and resonating with so many people. And I really find it interesting too how you're approaching this and how you're really kind of like setting up an environment for people to come into and succeed, and just letting everything else happen with this system that you've set up. So Where can people follow you online? Where's the best place?
Yes, yeah. So best place is obviously Twitter. My handle is Haining at Haining Max. So Haining Max on Twitter. Feel free to hit me up anytime. And if or when kind of Twitter crumbles or not, who knows anymore. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn as well, Max Haining. So yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on. Thanks for watching, everyone. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye bye.